Hello, I'm the Nerd and welcome to this code review of this project that I've just finished, which is called Lockdown Virtual Art Exhibition. So what this is basically using Playcanvas, WebGL, JavaScript game engine to design a virtual gallery. Now this is something I've been interested in for about 5 years now. I created a version of this application in Playcanvas about 5 years ago for the Tunnel, which is the organisation I created this new gallery exhibition project in. So introduced to a few concepts, I suppose. So the Tunnel is an artist group that I'm involved in of painters, digital artists, all sorts of artists making interesting work. Playcanvas is, like I said, this collaborative cloud-based engine, and the exhibition I created was called Lockdown, and I'm going to be talking more about the idea behind that and how it emerged. So basically the idea emerged because of the COVID-19 crisis. Everybody's stuck at home at the minute. Maybe if you're watching this in the future you'll know about it, but basically everybody's housebound at the minute. Most major cities and areas and countries are on lockdown. So at the minute, currently, it's quite hard to have the traditional gallery going experience, whereby you just go to a gallery or a show and can see things in the flesh, as it were. So to get around this problem, I thought I'd create a browser-based, so it's accessible for lots of different people, gallery in 3D. So in this video now I'll start going into some of the detail on how I did that. So I'm going to make this video have 3 levels to it. First one, I'm just going to show the thing, which I'll do now. Second will be talking generally about how I did it, and then third I'll go into a lot more detail so you can sort of go in and out of reviewing it, as it were. So without further ado, let's take a look. Okay, so basically the project's in 2 parts as well. So I created this simple site. We're using Bootstrap for hosting the actual files. It contains some information on the different artists with links to each of their associated websites and some screenshots of the actual gallery itself. So it's pretty simple, just as what it said on the box. It's mostly as a place to host the files. So let's actually play this thing. So like I said, one good thing about this project as well is that it supports desktop and mobile. So on the older version of this I didn't really have mobile support properly, but I've managed to add it in this version. So take a look, it's just loading up now. Okay, so this is our intro screen here, just some information, what it's about. Website created by me, made in Playcanvas, all that sort of self-explanatory. We're on desktop, so we're going to play on desktop. So okay, so moving around is achieved with clicking the left mouse button and dragging, which drags the movements WASD. We've got like a virtual curator here who you can talk to, which is well, not really talk to, but he just gives us some information about how to walk around the show. So you can see there's it's a sort of very highly textured environment. Use some nice textures I found online. Trying to recreate a sort of abandoned house sort of space, which is like the sort of spaces the Tunnel in reality exhibits in. So what does this support? Obviously we've got the artworks on the wall here. If you go up to have a look at those, you get a little thing here which says the title, the artist and the title. This is a piece that I did. I'll just full screen this actually. This is a piece that I made called Cybernaut. And control is via WASD, so W for forward, A for left, D for right, S for back. We've got some lighting, you can tell there that this light here is, it's got some nice lighting effects. I think it's maybe muted, so I'll just unmute it, because if you unmute it, should be able to hear a bit of music in a second. So it supports some 3D positional sound and most importantly video. So that's a feature I was quite happy with. I managed to get streaming video in a WebGL project, as it were. That was quite a difficult thing to achieve, but I managed to get it. I.e., like, if you're aware of any of this working with video, like cores can be a real headache, but I managed to get around it with a HT access. Editing the HT access file while the file's hosted, and then the sound itself is just over there where the video plays, so the further I go away from it, the quieter it gets, as you can tell. So yeah, that in a nutshell is it. It's what it says on the tin, really, like a 3D gallery experience. So yeah, and I've got some sort of like objects that I've just put in there, like the bed and the television, which is actually based on an old Soviet television model, I think. And you can yeah, sort of look at that as well. And it's not really an artist part of the exhibition, it's just sort of to make the environment a bit more interesting. So yeah, so that's that part. That's what the thing is, what the app is, what it does, what the point of it is. We did a live stream for this as well, I'll link to that below. There's also a little cat. So this is just an FBX model that's gone in, I've imported in with some textures. And then nice little feature here, we've got all the different artists with like photos on the side. So okay, next part we're going to do now is actually dive into the code, and I'll talk a bit more about some of that, some of the scripts and how I've achieved some of the functionality that the app has. So the actual app itself is built in Playcanvas, which I've been involved with building stuff on for a while. So in fact this show is basically, like I said before, an updated version of this Tunnel VR art gallery, albeit with updated scripts and functionality. So in Playcanvas, and this is not going to be a tutorial, so I'm not going to go about to use Playcanvas, but Playcanvas, this is like your editing, it's just browser based editor you can use, which is really cool actually, and powerful. So I'm going to just really go over some of this quite fast. I'm not going to go too much into detail, but this is our editor pane here, our editor screen. So once it's loaded up, you should see these models applied with some textures and stuff. And yeah, so you can sort of explore in 3D there in the middle here, which is quite useful. Every time you see one of these things, there's a script attached to it. So you can see this sort of like TV screen with a sort of like almost a terminal. And then this just sort of supports the standard functionality of be able to move, rotate, orbit around, etc, etc. So let's have a look at some of the scripts. And that's what you're here for probably if you're a programmer. So we're going to skim over these quite fast. There's no way I can go over all of it because there's quite a lot of controls in this. But let's, for example, look at first person movement as a start. So just load that up. This is loading up in Playcanvas's actual code editor, which is quite useful. So you don't have to open any separate code editors unless of course you want to and have extra features that you might have in that. So I'm not going to bore you too much with this, and even I don't understand exactly everything that's going on in this. This is basically based on, this is the first person movement, so this is a script for first person movement. And from what I remember, it's just based on the original script I had in there, and then I've modified a bit to be more up to date with the current Playcanvas standard. So let's have a look at some of this. This is just initializing the script here on this line. Then we've added some attributes here which you can use in the editor. So attributes, where it says first person movement attributes, add camera. That's editing an entity of camera, and then you can add power and look speed, which you can then edit, which are the numbers which correspond to the movement system. This is the movement system for the desktop in this version. Okay, so this is what happens when it's initialize. Is a function that's called upon initialization of the script. And then you can sort of look at some of this. And then it checks for if required components, like you need in Playcanvas. If you're making a 3D thing like this and you want collision detection, you're going to need the collision component added to it and the rigid body, so it just checks for that as well. So the player, whatever object is the player, needs to have those two components added to it, otherwise it won't collide with anything or won't register collisions. And then this is probably the main thing we want to look at. So so there's a little bit there to say if there's no camera, if, and then not this camera, create a camera. And then we have the checking for the controls being pressed. So A, for example, which is going to turn you left. D, which is going to turn you right. W, which is going to take you forward. And so you can see that there's plus equals forward, and then on S, which is back, so minus equals. And then it's applying force. And then we've also got some on mouse move, which is dealing with the mouse movement. Like I said, I don't want to go too much into depth on all this because let's just skim over it a bit. So let's have a look at trigger text, for example, which is that is basically when you go up to a artwork in game, it triggers the UI to show some text. So I've added like containers for those in the game and the UI element. Again, it's beyond the scope of this video to go really in depth into this. You can look into the documentation in Playcanvas if you really want to take a look at it. But again, I'm adding attributes, artist name and artwork name. So for each individual object, or being like a painting usually, it's going to have these attributes added to it when it has the script added to it. And then when this entity collision on, collision start this on, collision start this, and this is basically just saying add these two events to this entity, and then we can define what happens in those circumstances here. So trigger text, which is the script we're dealing with, prototype collision start, and then it says if it collides basically with another rigid body, which is just another way of saying another physical object in the game really. It has to find the app, the root, find by name, artist name, UI, which is, like I said, the container for which has already been added, and then it updates the text in that box with the attribute artist name, and likewise for artwork ID. So the same principle for the artwork ID. And then when it ends, it basically just resets it to an empty string, as you can see there. So that one's not too complicated. That's quite simple to understand. Those were what else have we got here? Just have a look. Something I've used, which it does actually support, but which I've not actually used in the version, is you can load external images too. So, like we were using with the attributes before, you can add a URL, add your own URL, and then there's a loader here. I won't go too much into that because it does support loading external images from an external URL, but I've just attached things as textures on this particular version, but it is there. This is quite an interesting one, so this took me a while to figure out. Like I was saying before, the video support. So how does that work then? So that's just, we've got attribute again. So basically how we have to do it is add a material and then add an attribute here for the video URL, and then I think it sort of like streams the video or MP4 to that material. If that makes sense. So I actually don't know everything that's going on here. I did find a reference for this code. Like, I'm not sure what pixel format R5G6B5 exactly does actually, but I think it's probably something to do with defining it as a video texture specifically, but that works anyway, which is nice. And then this is just creating a HTML5 video element to play the video, and then it's adding a reference to the video URL there. Cross-origin anonymous is often important, and then play the video. That's assigning the video to the video texture to the object that we, and then yeah, that's that. Like I said, this is one of the scripts which I was a bit more clueless about, but it did work, which is often how it goes. That's an older one. Again, older. Some of these things are out of date, they're just not been deleted. I was experimenting, this is quite interesting, I was experimenting with creating an NPC script, but I never really got that far with that, so I didn't bother with that. So that's most of the major functionality actually in the app. I'll just go off this now. So that's how most of the scripts function under the hood, as it were. So I hope that's been somewhat insightful. Playcanvas is free, so you can check that out. Like I said, I don't want to do too much of an in-depth video because I'm aware that it'll be too much information to take in. But I've covered some of the basic scripts we used in the game, and the platform it's designed on, and talked a bit about why I used that platform. You can fork this project, so if you want to have a look at it, you can have a look at all the code, in the editor on Playcanvas. It's on Playcanvas Lockdown Virtual Art Show, and then you can have a look at all the code there for it and really look into the specifics of how I've done things. Like any of these projects, it's all about just playing with the tools enough to the point where you get comfortable with them. I've been playing with Playcanvas for many years actually, so I'm fairly comfortable with how it works now, but like anything else, it's got a learning curve, but it's pretty easy to use. It's great that you can do collaboration in the cloud as well, so it's powerful in that sense. The only real drawback I think really is that if you really want to make serious games, you have to pay for it. There's a license, you have to pay for, like, to get proper access, like a gig space or more. You have to pay about, I think it's $15 a month, starting at $15 a month. So I pay for like a solo account, but even I've reached the limits of what I can do with it at that. So otherwise it's going to cost you $30. But it's worth investigating if you really want to look into, and it also does export out to iOS, it's not just web, so it is worth looking into. And I like that it's cloud-based. It's useful. I found it a lot easier to approach than Babylon.js, which I've looked into, but I want to explore Babylon.js more. But Playcanvas has got quite a nice easing in, it eases you in quite nicely. It's not like got a hard, steep learning curve, I found. So yeah, that was a bit of talking about this project, Lockdown Art. You can check the website out, it's lockdown-art.com. The website itself is just a simple bootstrap site that I had to put it up quite fast. We decided to launch it at quite a small window of time after the actual game was completed. But yeah, check it out. Let me know what you think. Hopefully it's been useful, insightful, etc, etc. Hopefully I'll have another tutorial coming up at some point in the future. I'm just very busy with work at the minute, and obviously COVID-19 is sort of like, it's a crazy time. But yeah, I guess that's all. I've been Noir Nerd. Thanks very much. Thanks for watching, and bye.